Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm just so happy to have human chemistry with all of the podcast listeners and viewers. And of course, a big part of that human chemistry is my co-host, Ovi Kabir. I just can't rub his arm or hug him through the screen for like a minute or two or 10.
I was wondering where this was going, David. Actually, I was a little worried because it is interesting how these relationships bond so quickly. And I will say, I think at this point, David, you and I have known each other for almost half a decade. We're getting
Yep.
close to that. I don't know if we're at the level of rubbing each other's arms when we wake each other up during the day. So it's quite surprising what happens in the Big Brother house, regardless of your relationships out of it.
It's, well, luckily for those two crazy kids, that chemistry can still bubble away and cause reactions because Vince won the blockbuster and Mickey was massively blindsided. So they can keep exploring their chemistry.
That's one way to put it. That is what they have a couple weeks to do such. And we will explore our chemistry outside of the house on this podcast while we live miles away without rubbing the arms.
Yes. It's funny because, normally I like to start with something related to the player, something that the player did. But this has been a fairly quiet week for Mickey compared to the past few, till she got out and did her interviews. And then we had, the nuclear explosion shirt that I have. It almost seemed like the past was in the past for her. But it clearly was not. And to figure out why, we will follow our usual path of comparing how she played to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote way back in 2004 and have modified ever since. We will analyze her actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And of course, the most recent published version is posted at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. Now, we usually have some other things to discuss about the week in general. I have one main topic this week that I would like to talk about a little bit, and it is what we started with, the human chemistry of it all. I know it's been discussed a lot elsewhere, including on my own videos, so we can keep it fairly brief. But live feed viewers have seen this forming for a little while now, and then it made it to the TV episodes with, I don't often compliment production, but I like the way they kind of like snuck it in on, the Sunday episode. There were a few of their long hugs thrown in, just enough to get the TV only viewers going, what's going on here? And then they had a whole segment on Wednesday where Vince had a chance to say what he thought, and he failed miserably by claiming there was no romance at all. What did you think of what he had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this because I had somebody tweet at me or X at me, and it was saying regarding the situation, people are confused, I think, initially about what is the situation with Vince. Maybe this is something that was because the show even talks about him being in a relationship, a long-term relationship, 7 years, if I remember. And somebody said the conversation was, would you let your partner, flirt with somebody else in the house, etc. And I think somebody mentioned saying, I heard Ovi said, I think on this episode, not this episode, but one of our episodes, that
if they heard it on this episode, they've invented time travel, so we need to talk about people.
But it was that I said that's fine, or that's something that was already agreed upon with them, and that was a strategy of mine as well. That was never. Never I employed that strategy. If you watch my season, it wouldn't have worked out either way. But it was never a strategy. And I would also say
you didn't rub Jackson's arm to try and gain his favor?
I didn't rub any arms. I guess it didn't work in my favor.
And that is why Ovi lost.
That is the key. Let's go back in time. It's one of those things that I think more than anything, because this is a segment we get to talk about kind of what we think about this versus because it impacts game, but outside the game, I feel bad for, his partner outside or his ex-partner. I'm not sure the status of it. If this was something that was not conversated beforehand, it doesn't seem like it. I think it's just really, it's so sad to see that when you're watching the television, especially I think what, like you mentioned, the show itself kind of really, I was surprised at how they showed it, because typically they try to avoid that type of thing when they, know somebody has a partner on the outside and they're doing things inside. But the show was like, we can't hide it, and like, let's show this. And they masterfully told the story of kind of like how you mentioned, it suddenly grew into something else. And I mean, the house can see it, everyone sees it at this point. And they're also, it adds a different thing, because it's like, oh, it's a showman's kind of, or a whatever man's. But also, they all know, because Vince has talked about his relationship outside the house. It's very icky, I think, for most people.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, Ava and Will had the best and most amusing insight into it. As Will said, there's some things you just won't see him doing. And that's really the main point to me. Like, maybe Vince has convinced himself that this really is nothing more than a couple of really close friends, and he's still loyal to his parentheses ex-girlfriend, Kelsey. You still have to think about how it looks. And it doesn't look good. I mean, just on the live show, the live eviction show. So it's a good thing that the show introduced it, because on the live eviction show, we saw them with their long hugs, not once, but twice. And on the second time, their mics picked up that boom, 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 boom. The rapid heartbeat, much like we hear when a showman's hugs on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's my now wife Hannah. I think she would literally break into the house and rip me out of the studio. I imagine, David, your partner might do the exact same. I mean, I feel like it's just, one is, at the end of the day, it's disrespectful, but also two, on a game level, it looks so strange to all the other players. I really think, it turns them off. Like you mentioned, we saw that. Like somebody like Will, who, he's talked about his partner, he's very close with them, and expressed like, hey, this is something I would never do. I think it really also impacts the jury down the line. I mean, I just think it's one of those conversations you start to question somebody's morality. You question about their whole gameplay. Like, oh, if you're willing to do this to somebody that you are long-term relationship with, how can I trust you in the house? What are
yeah.
What
I
are you
mean,
gonna do to me?
Yeah, I have a thought on that in a minute here, but you were talking about, what our own partners would do. And, Vince described on live feeds, oh, Kelsey's the least jealous person in the world. Yeah, I don't care. I think you can literally find the least jealous person in the world. And if you're watching this as that person, you're not thinking, oh, that's fine. And from what I've heard about things she's said and done on social media, she definitely has not thought it was fine. But like you said, there's also the side that's more relevant to this podcast, which is the strategic portion. First of all this hugging and touching and togetherness shows everyone else how close they are. When Mickey was asking for Morgan's vote on Thursday night's episode, she prefaced it by saying, I know you love Vince. I know that you love that man. Okay, right there is, she's saying it. And others have to worry about whether Morgan would vote the correct way. But you just talked about Vince doing this to his partner outside. Well, he tried to do it to Morgan too, because I mean, one of the rules is separate game from emotion. He doesn't seem to have any problems with that, because he was part of the plan to get Morgan to use the veto on him and then nominate Ashley after telling her Keanu would actually nominate Lauren. He was lying to her face in the middle of all those hugs. He's not just a weasel, he's a vicious weasel.
Ooh, we're starting off. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean,
yeah.
and
I like that. Ooh, well, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong. I mean, I truly think it's like, out of anything, I think it's humiliating to you, to your partner. I think that's just how that's disrespectful at the end of the day, and how you hold yourself. There's so much things you can do in the game, right? You can lie, cheat,
not how he's holding himself. That's the problem.
And I think
how he's holding her.
Yes. But here's the thing: if he came in and planned in the game and told people he didn't have a partner, that would be one thing, because then it would be like game. That's just his game thought. He came in here with an objective. He talked to his partner about this. I think that's why I don't think it's game related. Because if that was a plan, to flirt with people, work with people, he would tell people he was single from the beginning.
No, it's human chemistry.
Yeah. And it's it's just humiliating to his partner there, and it reflects poorly in him outside and inside the house. And I truly think this is going to be detrimental to his game down the line, because people are going to see as not just like a whatever man. It's like a weird thing that you're also like,
Well,
how can I trust you? How can I trust you?
Most people online are calling it the cheat mans.
Yeah, the cheat mans. The cheat mans. It is. I mean, it's and we just hit jury. We have a long way still to go in this game.
Well,
And,
not that long actually. It's a fairly short jury, but it's only, I think we only have like 3 more weeks or something like.
That's 21 days, David.
Yeah,
all right.
That's true.
We have time to evolution, a lot. And it's icky, I think, and it's interesting because I think very few times do players inside the house and people outside the house share that ickiness together. I think we in the house get to have that same perspective. We're like, oh, okay, like interesting. This is not good. So we'll see how this develops over the week. But I think this is not going to be the last time we talk about it, I feel like.
Well, it's especially not, because it leads directly into our semi-regular segment. It is time for Julie Chen Moonves is wrong about blank. And once again, it comes from her interview with Dalton Ross, where he asked her about this relationship. And she said, doesn't it seem fitting that Vince would allow those long hugs? He goes with any flow in the house, and he goes along to get along. I feel it's really on Morgan, who is initiating the hugs and lingering and doing the caressing. I'm sorry, excuse me? Excuse me? First of all, she's just plain wrong. I mean, I know she doesn't bother with the live feed. She barely pays attention to the show itself. But we saw those 2 hugs on Thursday night live. Vince went right to her after winning the blockbuster. Yes, she was waiting there with open arms, but he went right to her. And on live feeds, we can tell. We know, we see it. It is certainly not only her. I posted a video from when he was the HOH, and he came into the room. She was lying on the bed. He put down his stuff and crawled across the bed to get to her and hug her. This reminded me very much of a committed couple, of the man coming in, seeing the wife, girlfriend, whatever, and crawling. She did not initiate that. She was just lying there. I don't know how you can make this statement. Julie is just plain factually wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 2 to tango here. And I will always say, we can make the argument against Morgan. Morgan is a single person, from what we know. The onus is on the person who has the commitment there, and it seems like it doesn't matter. It comes on him. I mean, it's not a good look by her side too. But at the end of the day, she's not humiliating somebody else back home. That's on him. But I am not surprised by that assessment from our regular segment.
I mean, that's exactly it. I guess we shouldn't be, because she only added her husband's last name to her own as an apparent sort of protest after he was forced to step down due to multiple credible accusations of sexual misconduct and assault. So I guess she was blaming the woman for those too, considering that she's still with him and added his name to hers.
I feel like past actions still influence future assessments. And you can see that in the pattern. I mean, it's the thought side of it. Anybody to view that, I mean, you have to realize. I mean, I think there's some people in the camp who always will get mad at, the woman or the other person who's outside the relationship for trying to home wreck or whatnot. This instance, this is really on him. This is on him, and he's the one who's brought up his relationship, talked about it, and everything. Yeah, like you mentioned beforehand, I don't know a world where even the least jealous person is having to watch this 24/7 across the whole world, and it's one of those things. Like, it doesn't seem like, from everything we've seen, also that she feel like this was what they've talked about beforehand. So yeah, ridiculous.
The one more thing about Julie, she could have just not said that. Like, Dalton didn't say, and what part do you believe Morgan plays in this? she added it. She answered the question and she added that in there. She could have fully answered the question without mentioning Morgan at all. She had to go out of her way to blame Morgan. Again, this really just seems like she's trying to make a different point here.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably takes the cake for a top 5 Julie Shannon versus Blanc segment.
Yeah.
I would say it's
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. All right. Well, after that, do you have anything or anyone else you want to discuss before we move on to the rules?
Yeah, I mean, the cheat mans has been on my mind, and we talked about it. I'm also, I think it's impressive we were able to. We had such a big segment to talk about something without it even mentioning the person who went home. Because typically it has to be with them. It kind of does a little bit, but truly, Mickey has her own portion that we have to talk about. So I'm ready to get into it.
All right. Well, just before we do that, of course, the Big Brother rules are not yet available in any, merch form. But I want to mention before we get to those Big Brother rules that we have a Survivor version in a shorter and much more colorful poster. Go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster and click on it. In addition, you can get the poster on a t-shirt and you can get the checklist, which is closer to the rules, but not exactly. So we will, we'll have to work on that. We're going to try and make it an off-season project for me, is to try to get something related to the Big Brother rules. But the problem is I need to decide if these Big Brother rules are static yet. There was one change I'm considering, and I don't want to make a shirt or something and then change it. So, but anyway, for the Survivor stuff, you again can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed in order to click away. Well, Mickey has believed she was running the Big Brother house since she took Rylie's HOH from him. She thought she was going to win this vote 6-1 against Ashley, instead of it being exactly the opposite. But reality being the opposite of what she believed was a big part of Mickey's brand. How did she get everything so wrong? What did she do to turn all of her allies into enemies? Let's find out, because at RHAP, we know Big Brother and we know why Mickey lost. Now, the first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. A lot of people had high hopes for Mickey in this area, and she was seen as an early front runner to win because she seemed to be doing well here. She, of course, was an early, very tight duo with Morgan and Jimmy as well. That worked for a short while. We'll get to that more later. As things went along, she seemed to be in a good position, and some people were, like I said, forecasting her as the winner. Adrian even said she's probably the most well-positioned in this game. She's planning to work on jury. She's trying to get people out that she knows she can't work with and ones that she wouldn't have jury votes to win this game. She's well-positioned in this house.
Yeah, I mean, she was in a lot of different positions throughout the entirety of it. We saw a lot of alliances there. I mean, she came strong from the very get-go. Right. I mean, we saw Mickey really want to play the game, and it was interesting. I feel like maybe some people are fibbing through the casting process of how big of a fan they are, because they talk like they know the game, or some people say they're really good at games outside the Big Brother house, so they should be good at this. I feel like Mickey had that mindset where she really wanted to play so hard, and I feel like it's one of those things, because we have had a long pre-jury. I felt like Mickey was playing this game already in 99 days, the way she was playing it, and no ally of hers was safe. I mean, she was different alliances, and one thing I wish we could have seen from her, because we can't say Mickey didn't play the game. She played the game. She played it hard. I just wish she was able to take a breath, because she jumped from group to group of people, and she really made a considerate effort when one of her allies, let's say Morgan, right, was getting close to somebody else. She would feel like, I need to be her number one. I need to make sure I take out the people around them. And you can, yes, have it in the back of your head, but she continuously did that very early on. And you become suspicious of the people who are still working with you, even though you're not their number one.
Yeah. And then, so she was doing all these things before, in the early game. And then people loved it even more when she used her special power. taking over Rylie's HOH was the right move at the right time. Unfortunately, we're now learning that even when she did that, she didn't have the right read. She told Dalton Ross, obviously, I used my power because two of my closest allies would have potentially been on the block. And in that moment, I do think I had very much so the votes to stay. So I think me using my power was mainly for others. It was a very unselfish act. If there's one thing Mickey is going to do on an interview, it is compliment herself. I literally used to have a poster on the wall that said, David, you're right. And and this woman still beats me. This woman still beats me in complimenting herself at every opportunity. But in this case, well, in her situation, it's in almost every case, she was wrong. Because we, of course, know that Rylie talked about nominating her as well as her closest allies. And even at the time, she seemed to indicate she believed the same thing. So I guess Rylie must have gotten into her head after that. But whatever the reason was, she did the right thing. And then it was a downward spiral after that.
100%. I feel like it comes back to something we've talked about weeks ago, actually. I almost want to say it was on the Rylie episode. We mentioned one of the things I said, I feel like the way Mickey plays this game is she feels like everyone around her are NPCs, like they are non-playable characters. She is the only main character in Big Brother house, so she will say whatever she wants out loud, talk about how will this benefit my game, and in conversations with Ashley, she did just that. I mean, she goes on pretending that like she is kind of invincible in the game, and I think that's why she was the only one who really didn't see the blind side till the end.
Yes.
And so when you play that type of game, again, you can be strategic, you can make these moves, but you have to have an awareness that what are your moves causing. I don't think she ever thought any strategic move she made might have a negative impact on her game. She thought it might ripple and do other players. So like you mentioned, where they're like, I'm protecting other people for taking this HOA over. No, you're protecting yourself. And again, I think I would really appreciate her game so much more if we did see that level of right now, even own responsibility of it, awareness of it. But I mean,
we're never going to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and also it would have changed her game up a lot,
Oh, yeah.
in the house. It would have changed it completely.
Well, and that's exactly it. She should have immediately done everything she could to ensure Rylie was her target. And instead, she became best buddies with him from her viewpoint because she saw God in him while being certain that he would not come after her. She was wrong on both counts. It ended up not mattering, so I don't want to really spend, much in the way of time on it. But it's indicative of her overall gameplay, being wrong so consistently. Besides talking to Rylie, she also would talk to Keanu. And like in this case, his delusionalness, I believe I'm coining a word there, spread like a virus to her. She changed up all the plans. Now, part of it was literally Keanu having one of his delusional beliefs about Jimmy causing problems. And then it spread to her and she bought into it. Maybe because Keanu was so convincing because he believed it himself. Like Keanu was not lying. When Keanu says some of the things Keanu lies, don't get me wrong. But when you can usually catch him in a lie, like Rachel did last week. Rachel could see, like when she busted him in a lie, you could see the little hamster spinning in his head. But when he convinced himself early in the game, especially, that something was the way it was, he wasn't lying. He was just wrong. And that spread to her that, Jimmy was the one causing all the problems. And even Morgan was questioning it at the time, wondering how did our allies become enemies, and people like Rylie and Catherine were suddenly on their side, even though, like Zach had told her, Rylie talked about putting them up.
I think you gotta be careful how you're talking about your winner pick, David. It's like you don't want Keanu to win, this delusion you talk about. Keanu, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. Keanu is our most undelusional
player. You've caught it too. It's spreading. It's a new pandemic. Delusionalness.
The Keanu-ness. I think it's interesting because I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, there probably is a player, but it's interesting. She's smart. She's very intelligent. You can tell that, Mickey, in so many different ways. She has a reason why she makes moves, but she has the opposite of missed. Where instead of misting players, like it unfogs them. She's able to make her allies turn on her, and she missed.
I like the idea. She comes into a room and their mist automatically affects her.
Yeah. She brings it on her and she's walking around because she can't see that she's literally targeting her allies. Like it's a perfect example with Jimmy in that whole situation, which is the player who, yes, maybe down the line, and there's a lot of things we can talk about how Jimmy misplayed that, but maybe down the line, Jimmy might try to make a faction against her. So at that point, he is your ally still. He still wants to work with you. And it was very strange how her and Morgan iced him out, but we're not talking about Morgan's loss. It's Mickey. And I mean, she was kind of the one pushing this type of thing. And it's this level of hubris we see with players, but it became so early on where it's like you need people at your side to play the thing. And that's why you also get blindsided 6-1 essentially to go home because you took out any allies that could work with you potentially.
Yeah. I'll have more thoughts when we get to Rule 2 on that. There's a lot of overlap here. When you move from bad scheming to over scheming. But yeah, part of her delusionalness, I'm going to keep using that word till it works, was related to the way she just thought about things in general. Once she got an idea in her head, confirmation bias just completely took over. What she heard others say, her religious beliefs, things she just imagined, you name it. It didn't matter what logic said or if she had 10 people explaining to her why she was wrong. It was all about what was going on in her head. She referred to discernment in several interviews and said she felt some things in the house and she was on point. But no, you weren't on point. You got voted. You got blindsided 6-1. Like she had no idea that the Judges Alliance even existed. And she claimed to Mike Bloom in that same quote about the discernment that she claimed she felt some things in the house that were not the same as they were early on. And I just couldn't put my finger on it or didn't have enough time to dissect it. But I kind of knew what was going on without knowing. No, you can't know without knowing. You can't claim to know while also admitting you didn't know. The fact is you didn't know. But more importantly, it's not necessarily just the existence of the Judges Alliance that caused Mickey to be voted out. It goes back to the reason that alliance formed without her, despite having other people in that alliance who were supposedly aligned with her, like Morgan. People didn't like the way she played. They didn't want to include her because she was so messy, which we'll get to in a moment in Rule 2. But even for here in Rule 1, she would make game decisions without talking to other people who were supposed to be her allies. Morgan, Ava, Rachel, they all specifically mentioned this.
Exactly. And I think you put a great point in it that as you show the progression of all the moves she made, it wasn't where we've talked about past players were like, this was a bad week. If they just played this week a little better, it would have worked out for them. This was a slow, gradual change that we saw her allies turn on her. I mean, it's a game of Jenga she played where slowly each block is being taken out and she's speeding it. She could have waited the whole game to keep on doing this, but she schemed and plot throughout the entire week. She played 3 weeks within 1 week, and she kept overthinking with that. And I don't want to too much bleed into the next rule, but I do think also with this is she played the game we thought, maybe I was a little higher on her, that Ava would do, where she had this aura vibes, thinking this and that. And we talked about that in our pre-assessment. We were like, oh, Ava, might just go with her women, thinks she knows things without really knowing things. That's kind of what Mickey did and has done. I mean, it's like you said, like you can't know something without knowing it. Like it just that doesn't exist, And of course, we can say that metaphorically, man, but that doesn't make sense in the Big Brother house. I mean, that's what we saw there. If you did know this type of stuff, you would have taken action because we know the type of player Mickey is. She doesn't sit back on her laurels. She goes for it. She makes a move, and she made a lot of moves. It's just the wrong direction.
Yes. So let's go ahead and move into the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. And here is where things really went to hell in a handbasket for Mickey. I said in Rule 1 that taking over Rylie's HOH was the right move at the right time. It was just that she did everything wrong from that moment forward. We have seen people get HOH-itis, of course. somehow Mickey's strain of this illness became permanent. She still believed she was in charge of everything, even after her time as HOH. I have literally over 7 pages of notes, pretty small font, just related to the
Wow.
things Mickey did wrong for this rule. Now, obviously, we're not going to go over all of those, and I had to cut it down quite a bit. But the pattern is there. She acted like a dictator. She told people what to do. She made it very clear that she only thought of herself, despite her claim to the contrary in interviews.
Yeah, I mean, truly, if there is a handbook for overplaying, it really is her. I mean, she, like I said, she played 3 weeks in 1 week every
Mm.
week, and then never let go of it. I don't think, she ever took a pause. And we talk about the HOH-itis. I mean, the HOH-itis came from stealing somebody's HOH. I mean, it consumed her game, and which is really unfortunate to see because in all of it, you can see like she wants to be there. She wants to play hard, and that's what you want to see as a viewer. You want to see somebody who's just going to keep at it. And it was interesting because she was able to, through all the scheming, sometimes she'd find her footing again, but then she would over scheme once over. Like there was never a break in her type of actions. She couldn't sit low and just let things be, or she couldn't not have to have her hand in every honey pot. She would make it, whether it was a fight or come in here. And the other thing was with it is when she over schemed, and we see this with like the whole Rylie when she took over the HOH. She then felt like she had to fix it immediately, and the way she fixed it would then turn on other allies. I mean, it's one of those things. There's so much overcorrecting because she's playing so many different directions. It becomes such a maze that at the end you have no allies around you.
Yeah. I do want to make clear, we know, of course, the part of Big Brother is being able to tell different people different things within the game. But the main point of this rule is you need to be able to do that without everyone else catching on. Mickey thought she was a genius in this regard, and she was definitely not. She did it so often that people found out and they kept exchanging stories. I feel like there were at least 3 different instances of people getting together and, as they talked, slowly realizing that Mickey had told them the opposite things to cause them to stay against each other. For example, Ava and Ashley was a fairly recent one. But when you're locked in a house 24/7, you have to expect people to figure it out eventually when you do so much of it like Mickey did.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive that she played the way she did, that she made people who are on the other side of the house start working with each other because they were frustrated with her. I mean, it's one of those things where, yes, you have to keep it secret. And if you don't keep it secret, then you need to figure out who you talk to. But the thing is, she talked to so many different people, and she was very quick to essentially work with any group that benefited her at that point. So she would turn her allies, kind of throw them under the bus slightly, even though in the DR she'd be like, "No, I'm not doing that. I actually." But from the outside looking in, people would see that. So
Right.
it's tough. You have to choose who you're going to have to talk to and keep those lies consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about a few examples. I mentioned that I cut out a lot of them, but here are some what I think are good ones. Starting with the Rylie eviction. Mickey had a lot of conversations with people about possibly keeping him and voting out Morgan instead, to the point where it was truly up in the air. When it got to that point in live eviction night, we were all watching, not knowing what was going to happen. Now, those conversations got back to Morgan and made her, I mean, she was already suspicious. It made her realize she could not rely on Mickey. And even though Mickey did end up voting to keep Morgan, the damage was done. You can't talk about it, and then be like, okay, I'll keep you. But, I was still considering it. And Mickey herself even seems to realize this. She told Mike Bloom, I think Morgan was really upset that she felt like I wasn't going to keep her. And I'll be honest, she was somewhat right, because I was torn in regards to keeping Rylie over Morgan, just because I didn't trust Morgan a lot in that moment. Now, what she neglects to mention is that she caused the distrust to begin with by treating Morgan as an underling and yelling at her for not reporting back every conversation to her. And also for, she told Morgan previously how she and Zach and Vince stayed up till 4 a.m. talking to each other, and everyone sees it, and Morgan was to blame. Blaming the woman. I guess Mickey has a lot in common with Julie.
maybe, hopefully not. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we keep on talking about it, but it's the truth where you didn't see the other players as players in the Big Brother house, that they were just people going through and existing in the Big Brother house. Because you have to imagine, again, everyone's gonna play differently, but it's like any type of strategy game, any type of competition, everyone wants to win in the Big Brother house, right? So everyone has their own rationality, strategy, and they're going to have their own agenda. And because she never kept anything secret, she told a lot of different people, and she cut off her allies by making moves that were like, oh, wait, why are you doing that? I mean, we talk about the issue of Vince earlier, where it was like, how can you trust him if you see all these type of things he's doing? That was point blank for Mickey, because they continuously saw what was going on. I mean, it's one of those things too. And you think about these players, right? You think about Rachel in the house, who, one thing, if you know about Rachel, and here's the funny thing, it's Mickey, she said so many things about Rachel, but one thing is, like, Rachel, like, she rides for her people and she might hold a grudge in the thing. Take out Jimmy, and now you want to really work with Rachel. She's not going to forget that all these moves you do amount to something. And it's that over scheming we saw constantly that really turned people against her.
Yeah. And I mean, part of this information being out there was she told people things when she didn't need to. For example, earlier she told Zach that at some point she was going to have to nominate Lauren. This is the woman that he's been crushing on the entire time he was there. There was literally no reason to tell him that. She wasn't HOH. She might never have been HOH again. She was just giving away information that could turn people against her. And of course, the worst example was the way she went around trying to get people to say they would target Rachel if they became HOH. And this one was especially weird because after talking to people, she later lied right to their faces and claimed she never did it. Ava told Will she didn't know why Mickey was lying about targeting Rachel. She was like, just accept it and move on. Lying was not helping her case. And Will said, we don't need that smoke. Ava replied, I still love her, which obviously that changed. But do I trust her? I don't know. Not the way I did last week. Wake up call. And then Ava also told him, y'all's mouth's going to get you into trouble, and then you want to bitch about it. And I'm sure all of this situation was part of what Will was referencing in his goodbye message to her about, I love you like a daughter, but you've been doing some hinky stuff.
Yeah, and she, really had such a long length of leash everyone was giving her. Like, every player has a leash on them, where your trust can only go so far till it rips, essentially. And that's what happened with Ava, Will, people who really wanted to work with her. And that's the thing, is they aligned with her strategically. They aligned with her because they liked who she was. It was really just this portion of it. And I mean, we can talk about all the portions of the rules that, like, really lost her the game, but it was really this. If she was able to dial it down, if she was able to just stay within her lines, work with the people.
I mean,
and then
you make that sound so simple. If she was just able to dial it down, she would have had to dial down her whole self. There's so much about that. But yes, you're right. There's a lot that she obviously should have, dialed down. And this is why it's dumb to make plans publicly about, like, how you're going to evict this person or that person when you're not in power and you have no idea when you will be. Mickey, like, didn't even wait to find out in this situation who would be HOH. If she had, she would have seen that it was Rachel who became HOH, and maybe, she would have kept her mouth shut. But she couldn't do that. She claimed to Mike Bloom. I don't think I ever said that to people that were not connected or in our little bubble. But her problem is it didn't stay in her little bubble. And then she lied and said she hadn't even said anything to her little bubble.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think the players, which is still impressive, they wanted her just to own up to, like, why are you lying about small things, when you don't need to. Like, we have your back here, like, we will, like, it is what it is. Like, you like own it, we accept it. But when you keep on lying and then you try to gaslight the other players, your allies, being like, actually, this didn't happen, that frustrates them, because then they start questioning their truth. And I think that's the worst thing in the Big Brother house, when you start questioning your own truth and somebody makes you question it. And then when you think about it and you solidify your mind, you're like, oh wait, actually no, I feel like I am in the right. Like, I did what I said was, like, nothing wrong. So then you look at that person who tried to gaslight you, being like, Why are you trying to do that? So your distrust of them goes tenfold. And I think that was the issue right there, where, we talk about Ava and Will, who were really strong allies of her potentially. I mean, even Morgan, who was really, they had a final two essentially going to the end. You turn these people who are so close to you against you. It's hard to do, honestly.
Yeah. So then, of course, she tried to smooth it all over and fool Rachel. But Rachel fact-checked her just before the nominations and decided to put her on the block. This sent Mickey into a rage as she said she felt betrayed and Rachel was manipulative and conniving. Now, remember, this was just after she spent days trashing Rachel, but tried to BS her for a couple hours. It was really Mickey being upset that Rachel didn't buy her BS. However, Mickey was so convincing, I wondered if she believed what she was saying. I honestly still don't know. And neither did her own supposed allies who saw the same thing. Like, did you convince yourself that this didn't happen? Are you truly that delusional?
I mean, I think sometimes when you stick to the lie, right, you keep it for so long, it becomes a truth to yourself. And I think that might have been the way she had to play the game. I truly think there's points of it where she convinces herself that, like, hey, this actually happened. I actually never went against you, Rachel. I mean, because we don't also see, sometimes when we see players talk about it, and sometimes she did, but a lot of times she didn't, where they go in the DR room and they're like, actually, no, I know what I'm doing. But with her, it was always, and even in these interviews post game, we're still seeing her kind of stick to that source, which makes me believe what you just said is she did believe it. She believed her own lies.
Yeah. I mean, some of it we know was lying. Like she kept the BS river of tears flowing and somewhat got to Rachel after the nominations. Of course, by that point, it didn't really matter. But I think she believed she had gotten on Rachel's good side. What she didn't realize was if she hadn't won that blockbuster, she would have been evicted that week because it wasn't only Rachel she had managed to get against her, but pretty much everyone. What had been a slow buildup to not trusting her turned into a full-blown revolution against the Mictator. She had already lost Keanu. She lost her closest ally, Morgan, and ensured that when Morgan and Rachel compared notes and realized Mickey had lied to Morgan to keep her away from Rachel, so that was one of those instances I mentioned earlier, she was in the process of losing Ashley when Ashley and Ava cross-referenced all the things they'd heard about each other from Mickey. So that got both of them against her. Not to mention that the more Ava thought about it, the more she felt manipulated by Mickey during Ava's own HOH. Plus, Ava finding out from Will that Mickey had floated her as a pawn nomination, again, when she wins HOH. As Ava said, Rachel was so loyal, and you mentioned this too, that she rode for her friends even when they were in danger, while Mickey offered her up as a pawn. So once again, handing out information that can bite you in the ass for no reason at all. Rachel said it when she found out these people are so bad at Big Brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think truly it helps you having the game knowledge of how Big Brother's played. And we talk about it. I think this is what differentiates truly Big Brother with so many other games and Survivor and other. It's so long. Your life will catch up to you if you're not consistent with it. If you play this sporadically, like I think there's incredible Survivor players who might not be able to translate their game into Big Brother because it's such a long game. You can't burn out like a flame, and vice versa. I think there's a lot of Big Brother players, probably more so, that couldn't cut it in Survivor. And I think it's one of those things where she played this game that like it was like 26 days, like it was 30-day game, and she's burning out there because she's not staying consistent what she needs to do.
Yeah. And then there were also random things she did by breaking this rule. She held one-on-one meetings when she had literally no power. Like, what are you doing? Who are you? You are not the HOH. Sorry, I forgot. She became HOH for life in her own head.
This always is.
Yeah. She lied for no reason, like telling Catherine that she and Morgan had only strategized once and everything else was personal talk. Even someone as disconnected as Catherine could figure out that was a lie. She asked Lauren to throw the OTEV comp so that one of the people on the block, mainly her, hopefully, in her mind, could win it. even though Lauren knew full well she was the likely replacement nominee. So why would she do that? And so this just caused thoughts about Mickey to spread throughout the entire house. While Catherine was still there, she said Mickey was trying to manipulate the game to be all her jury. So much for that. She would cry and lie to people, not just Rachel, but other people. And they were catching on. Morgan and Ashley realized Mickey had been hurting their game and their personal relationship, which others figured out as well. They saw her pit people against each other. They talked about how Mickey wanted to know everything to control the game. As Ava told Lauren, Mickey had been going around like crazy and lying to everybody. She was one of the people in the house I trusted the most, and my dumbass trusted the craziest bitch in the effing house.
That's a quote right there.
That is a quote. That is a pure Ava quote. Except for the effing. She doesn't say effing.
And for somebody who Mickey, who believes like she knows things without knowing it, she really lost the vibe master. The vibe master of the house was Ava, who really values her ability of seeing auras. And unfortunately, I think it worked against Mickey. She saw that aura that she didn't like, and Mickey was not like she missed it herself.
I think it proved Ava does not see auras. Between supporting Mickey for a long time and supporting Rylie right up till this minute, I don't think her aura reading business is going to be a lot.
She didn't say the length of it, how much it takes to see the auras. It might take her a couple months, maybe a year or so, to then evaluate live feeds plus.
That's a long drawing to do in the middle of Central Park or wherever she does that. Sorry, you have to stay here for 2 months for me to see what your aura really looks like.
Gotta come back for it.
Now I just mentioned, like we just said, Ava calling Mickey crazy and talked about her being delusional earlier. As just one example, when she was on the block alongside Ava, she told Ashley that if Ava won the veto, Mickey would convince her to give it to Mickey. So not only was she delusional, but she was also dumb to say it because, of course, it got back to Ava, and it made Ava even madder at her for thinking she could manipulate her that way. This was another thing she didn't need to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the funniest thing she said, telling Vince after he nominated her that she thought he would have the decency and respect for her to talk it out with her instead of listening to the chattering in his ear and immediately putting her up. I wonder what Jimmy thinks about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, the hypocrisy of it, it sucks when it happens to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's what, also it's like fair game. Once you do it to another player and you get them out, some players see it like it's open season on you, live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah.
That's what happened to her.
Yeah. Now, after she won Blockbuster earlier, she had no idea, like I mentioned earlier, how close she came to being evicted. She continued to live in her world of delusion where she was solidly staying no matter what. So that meant she didn't change the way she was acting. I mentioned earlier that she was less active this week than she had been previously, but that didn't matter. Nobody wanted her there. As Ava said about the previous vote, the chick just doesn't have the votes, and I'm not putting my ass on the line to try to get them for her when she's over half the house. Nobody was going to fight for her to stay. Nobody even bothered to tell her she was on the losing end of the vote, even though she had asked people like Will to tell her. Nobody said anything. And even near the end, there was this small idea to keep her. But she got caught again promising different things to everyone, and that just shut it down permanently.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot when your own teammates, your own house guests, can't tell you, who are supposed to be your allies. You're in an alliance with them because they couldn't trust that information to her. She wouldn't do something so wild with. And it becomes a thing where it's like, I think most of them are like, it might not be the worst thing for her to leave the house. And that's the hard thing. When it becomes not even like, oh, man, we want to keep her. It hurts. They're like, well, if she goes, she goes. And I think that was the sentiment even of her allies by the time it came along.
Yeah. The third rule we could finally move on to talks about the need to be flexible. Now, considering that I mentioned this once already, and you kind of shook your head, her nickname among many fans was the Mictator. How do you think she did in this role?
It's tough because I think she was flexible in ways of her own game, not what any other person really brought up to her. When she made her decision, she stuck by it. But I don't know. I don't think it's flexibility from when one of your moves goes wrong and you try to fix it, because that was kind of consistently her game. But the issue was she didn't take any other people's input when she had her mindset and she like, this is what I'm going to do, and if they feel differently about it, it's no go. So I mean, flexibility really wasn't. If we're going to take in that she changed up her plan, she really didn't. She just had to kind of not own up her mistakes, try to make up for the mistakes. But I don't think it showed much flexibility from her part, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. She was, definitely not flexible. Like you said, it was always her way or the highway. She was controlling. We discussed earlier, telling people like Morgan and Keanu that they weren't allowed to have conversations without reporting back to her. Even going so far as to tell Keanu, if anyone is banding together to get me out, I would just like to know. And Keanu said exactly what I was thinking, which was, well, duh. Of course, anyone would like to know. It doesn't mean you will. And then, as the conversation continued briefly, she later said she's entitled to know. And yeah, entitled was definitely the right word there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that sums up the game of hers, entitlement, of how she felt, how players owed her information. She felt like she should win this game of the way she was playing. And it's kind of the same. How her response was like, essentially, when you see her go out, damn, 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 it's just the whole time she said, because she was so blindsided. I think that was the first time truly she felt like, oh my goodness, other people are trying to play the game to win the game, and I wasn't the only person. I mean, and we saw that. I mean, and maybe if we saw her feel like she could change her way slightly, this and that, move it around, we would have seen that. If we saw the flexibility from her, she wouldn't be in this position she was in.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, you mentioned it earlier, I think, that she refused to adjust even after she was nominated. She was so certain that she was right about everything, especially that she was safe and everybody supported her. She was just living in this fantasy world where everything was already perfect. So she had no need to change.
Yeah, she didn't have to. I mean, I guess that's the thing is we always talk about when I say you have to be tested to see
Yes.
your flexibility in it. She never felt like she was tested because I think it was the unawareness of it that she was in danger. Like you mentioned, like I think it's a great point, David, is that she felt so. Yeah, the self, and she was so invincible. She felt in her own mind, why would I need to change my way when it's like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And she never thought anything was broken in the house on her part.
Right. All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them. This one's a little bit of a puzzler for me. So, how do you think she did here?
Well, I mean, I feel like
it's a little bit of a puzzler for you too.
I mean, here's the thing: is this is where I have a little difficulty with this portion, is because I do think she let emotions, like she kind of acted with certain emotions how she did it, but I think she saw a strategic reason to do each of the moves she did. And I feel like when she thought Jimmy, like to take him out there, or like he's going against me, I need to take him off, and she was set in her ways. So it's like she was hurt that Jimmy did that, but she thought it was a strategically sound move to do so. When she took over Riley's H-Twitch, she felt that was a strategically sound move to do so. When she tried to convince Ava to essentially throw the veto, she did all these moves because she saw a rationale behind it. So that's why, I mean, the parts of it where I feel like maybe she had that emotional thing is when we talk about that connection to Rylie afterwards, like we're talking about the religious values and she wants to connect with him afterwards. Maybe we could say that's emotional, but I think overall, I mean, I don't know how much of her emotional plays as much guided her game because she still saw a rationale behind it. So I don't know what came first,
you hit like the same examples and almost the same words that I had in my notes. I mean, like you said, I think she believed she was being logical, and sometimes it did play a bigger part. But I just think it was influenced by emotion, whether she realized it or would admit it. And yeah, so like you said, the Jimmy vote, the Rylie, getting together with Rylie. It's funny because even in talking about leaving the decision to Faith, leaving the Jimmy decision to Faith. Lauren and Zach were talking at one point about how Mickey said that. And Zach, who is obviously very religious, seemed shocked and said it was stupid gameplay to leave it to Faith. And now he wasn't right about much in the house, but he got that one right.
You got that one right. I mean, again, I don't know if that's the right thing to say to certain people, right? But I mean, he says it outside of it, and I mean,
right.
It's the truth of it. And I mean, again, like we can quantify whether we say religious values to emotional, whatnot. But when you have your own, I don't know if that leads into personal beliefs, letting it guide your way. But you're right. I mean, it kind of went hand to hand. But that's why it's tough to judge on this rule.
Yeah. All right, well, the fifth rule says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. And I said earlier that the second rule was where things went to hell for her, but she definitely didn't do herself any favors here either. Let's just say it right off the top, she has no ability to pretend to be nice, none whatsoever. I believe she thinks she does, but she fails. I, quote unquote, only have half as many notes for this rule as I had for rule 2, but that's still a lot. So again, I had to cull through them. So anyone listening,
3.5 pages.
Still. Yeah. So if your favorite example isn't in here, anyone, that's why. Sorry, I couldn't keep them all. But there is some overlap between this rule and rule 2, because the way she was acting was not only strategically bad, but socially bad. So, for example, once she became HOH and that HOH-itis struck, she started treating everyone like underlings. She was rude. She talked down to them. And as we've discussed, it didn't end when her HOH reign did. Ashley told Rachel, the way she's talking lately is just crazy. And Rachel noted Mickey wouldn't even let her cook without permission. Ashley saw what we did, that she became a completely different person. And, Rachel said she told her numerous times, don't act that way, don't do certain things. But Mickey wouldn't listen.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, too. It's a level of hubris, right? When you don't feel like the game is going bad for you, when you don't feel like you're a target, you feel invincible in the game, why would you change your behavior? It's working for you, and it just all kind of comes around back to like this level of you need to have an awareness when you feel the red dot is on your head, like the target is coming for you when you are making things better. So for her, maybe she thought, like you mentioned, maybe she thought she was being nice, social game, pretending to this, but
wow.
it wasn't, again, I don't know. It's one of those things where I always hate people. I have family who does this all the time. They'll say something that's like super off the wall, and they're like, well, I'm just telling the truth. Your truth might be a little different than the truth, but also it's like, just because you think it's something right doesn't mean it's right to say that, know? And I think that's kind of the same way for her. She's like, well, that's my truth. This is how I am. You'll like it if you don't. And she's like, I think people appreciate my bluntness and how I am with around them. Well, unfortunately, she couldn't see that they didn't. And so I mean, you have to have an awareness to understand that you need to pretend to be nice, because in her head, she was like, they like me how I am.
Yeah. I mean, mostly, but even sometimes she didn't even want to bother with it. Like Ashley tried to bridge the gap between Mickey and Rachel, and Mickey said, I don't want it fixed.
Yeah.
Rachel just needed to be nice to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she separately said, I'm not a yes woman. I'm not going to stroke her ego. I don't care about her feelings anymore. I'm done being nice. I don't care. Oh, of course, Queen Mickey. How dare someone suggest you be nice to anyone? Hamster Watch said it really well on Blue Sky, that Mickey made the same mistake Keanu did a while back, and which lots of people do in both Big Brother and life. She was all excuses, reasons, explanations, rather than acknowledgments and apologies. And a perfect example of this was after she yelled at Morgan when Vince nominated Mickey. She went to supposedly apologize to Morgan. But instead, she started by suggesting Morgan didn't have the, quote, decency to give her the information. And then she cried. And then she said she trusted Morgan and Morgan trusted Vince. And she was condescending. I don't think she ever got around to actually apologizing.
No, and it's like the blinders that you have to have in those conversations. And that's what makes me sad, is because, like, we go back to saying that when Mickey's believes her lies, and I feel like she believes she was in the right, and I think even now she will feel the way she feels about the house because she feels like, what did I do really wrong, you know?
Mhm.
And you need to have a level of awareness to see that. She just doesn't try and attempt that. So it makes me. I truly hope for her sake, regardless outside the house or whatever, she's able to kind of realize, hey, these are the reasons why, and because it's one of those things that I hope it doesn't, but it also impacts sometimes your outside house, big other experience, because if you're unable to accept what happened and it's because of your own onus, it makes it very difficult to move on and understand and enjoy the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Some other examples here. I called some, but I still have others. Ashley and Will talked about how Mickey had been rude and then acted like she didn't say anything rude. So this goes back, I think, to what you were saying. In her mind, she wasn't. She was, she was perfect. Um, she and Morgan got mad at Kelly, which, and this is fairly recently. I think it was last week. Understandable, totally understandable to be mad at Kelly. But they took it too far. They decided when they were cooking dinner, they would put meat in everything, even though they had previously accommodated her as a vegetarian. I'm sorry, that's just being a jerk. And if I'm defending Kelly, it was bad.
Yeah, no, it gets to a point if you're having to defend her. But no, I mean it's one of those things too. It's there's decent human being things you can do to that are ungame related, and I think it's interesting because it seems like this is a house that feels like when people are done with each other game wise. I think Mickey and personified this in a lot of ways. When they feel like they're done with them game wise, they're done with them in general. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, we don't need to respect you as a being. And again, some might argue that is a tactic in the game strategy. I don't subscribe to that theory. I think you could play the game and not be a bad person to somebody else while outside of the game in the game. So that's it's unfortunate because she took on those moves, but we're seeing that habit pattern, a little nasty pattern from other house guests too.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. She had the nerve to say in interviews that Rachel and Ashley are the nasty ones in the house when we saw how she acted both to Jimmy and behind his back. We saw the way she told Rachel that she would respect whatever decision she made, and then she absolutely blew a gasket when she got nominated. She insulted Rachel personally, brought up her family. I mean, this is all behind her back, but brought up her family. She was just being a nasty person.
Yeah, no, it's strange. People are liking to, they're enjoying for whatever reason getting off on like attacking Rachel as a mother, as a partner, as all these things. When it's like, it's we're seeing
Yeah.
you got got, you lost the game, and it's not because of Rachel being a horrible human being. Uh, in fact, and it's one of those things where it's unfortunate where some players are kind of going that place and trying to use that to justify how they feel. Again, there's game related and there's within the game, and people can be frustrated. Here's the thing: is players, people who watch it can be frustrated at Rachel's game if they are, where they're like, oh, I feel like she's bullying him into this. She's playing the game. Rachel is really like playing the game and making, if the players don't try to fight back against Rachel, right? That's her prerogative. But at the same time, what level is it going to? Is Rachel talking about their family? Is she
Right.
talking about them as a person? Not really. That's not the
No.
case.
Yeah.
So why bring it that way?
Right. And, several players had things to say about Mickey's behavior and how it would come back to bite her. Morgan told Vince that she forgave Mickey on a personal level, but not on a game level. I'm just supposed to forget you spoke to me like that and have been talking shit about me for weeks. But Ava had the most to say, of course, which you could probably guess by the way she celebrated when Mickey left. She noted, these little kids want to pick fights with Rachel. They're effing stupid. She also said, the bitch is crazy, and the bitch does not understand that her actions will have consequences. And of course, she told Will, I hate her. I hate Mickey so much. I hate her so much. I hate her. I do. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. Every time she's like, Ava Wava, I'm like, shut up. I hate her. So fake. I can't stand it. I think that pretty much is sums her up nicely for this rule.
I'm unclear how Ava feels about
Yeah.
Mickey right now. Actually, I think maybe I need a little more description on that one, David.
Would you like me to read
But
that quote again for you?
I'll trust you on the fact
Okay.
that maybe
Okay.
she feels lukewarm on Mickey at this point. Maybe. Big fan.
All right.
Oh
Well, the
man.
sixth rule warns against being too much of a threat. Over the course of the past few weeks, there has been discussion among podcasters and viewers about how Mickey was a number for her side. So maybe it would be strategically best for people on her side to keep her. And yet they didn't. Do you think it had anything to do with this rule?
Ugh. No, not. I mean, yes and no. In a way, I think people can see her threat level in a way, but at the same time, it became more so that she is less of an asset. And when you're less of an asset to an alliance, then you become maybe a threat to them because you're like, we don't want to utilize you in any shape or form. But also maybe the level of her kind of trying to work her way and throw anybody under the bus really frustrated players. But it unified all of them in a way because they were just so frustrated with her. So I think it's one of the interesting cases where, yes, there are parts of her game where they're like, oh, like she could be a threat. But I think more so is they disliked her and her gameplay more so than they felt threatened by it. I think the threatening part of it is kind of passed already. I think for them, like Morgan, she felt betrayed. Ava felt betrayed. Will felt, awed by her. Versus, I'm threatened by him. I'm kind of sad that you did this.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would say it mostly had to do with rules 2 and 5, as we've discussed. I think this one, like you indicated, it had more of a tangential role. Everyone saw how she had turned on Jimmy. So how can you trust her? In some ways, it's like a version of Vince that we were talking about, telling people. I mean, besides the version that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, how can you trust him? But also just even within the game, telling people what they wanted to hear so that she could try to stay good with all of them. But that meant none of those people could believe that she was actually good with them.
100%. Yeah, I think it's one of those cases where it's and I think maybe she will feel like many other players that, hey, they got me out because they had to. I am the biggest threat in the house. But the fact was she wasn't. Her strategy. Her strategy actually tried to utilize this thing where it was like, let me keep bigger threats in the house so they, cover me, they shield me. Well, she didn't need a shield there. What she needed, a shield was meaner people in the house because then that would have covered. Like it wasn't the threatening part of it that people was trying to go for her. It's so it's one of those things where it's kind of funny.
I've heard of a meat shield before. I have not heard of a mean shield.
Mean
before.
shield. She
A
needed
mean
the mean
shield.
shield.
You have created a new term here.
Delusionalist and then meat and shield are two for the day.
That's right. If we still used hashtags in the podcast, hashtag mean shield. Yes. Talking of Vince, even he said, Mickey scares me in the most flattering, complimentary way possible. She is so effing good at this game. She's the only person who could take over an HOH, piss off both Rylie and Catherine, and be best friends with them by the end of it. How to talk your way out of that is insane. Now, here's the thing. He's wrong. Both of them still wanted Mickey gone. But, I mean, could this have been a contributing reason because some of them believed it to be true? I suppose, just like she was treated a little bit as a threat because Keanu told Vince Mickey should go because she was supposedly better at comps than Ashley. Maybe a little tiny minuscule.
I think it becomes one of those things too. You're trying to convince others rather than yourself, because it doesn't hurt to convince other people that somebody's a big threat, especially when you're on the block with them or you think they could be,
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things more so that maybe Vince genuinely believed. Because I think I could be wrong here. I think not many players believe that if Mickey's at the end with them, that she would beat them at this point with the people she's burnt. So I feel like, and it's not like she's a competition beast. So it's one of those things where I don't know how much validity there is in it. What threat does she pose when she doesn't have alliance members, doesn't have jury votes, and doesn't have the competition ability as some other players already have?
Yeah. All right, well, we can go to the seventh rule, which says to trust almost nobody. We saw how blindsided Mickey was, which tells us she definitely trusted the wrong people. But it goes even further than that. There had been some discussion on the live feeds about the possibility of Mickey throwing the blockbuster to Vince if she could, because he was supposedly in a more dangerous position and she would easily be safe, at least in her mind, and as they tried to convince her of this. In her interviews, she essentially admitted to throwing, but she kept hedging on using that word. So, for example, she told Mike Bloom, "I would not say I threw the blockbuster. No, I did not go as hard as I would have gone because let's be honest, I am a mini blockbuster queen. I definitely would have aced that and been good. I did let up just a little bit, but I wouldn't say throw it. I just wanted to make sure that I gave Vince an equal opportunity, just because I do think I win out when it comes to athleticism. Let's be honest. So I knew I was going to eat him up, and I almost did, but I wouldn't say throw. I kind of was a little nice to him for sure." That is a lot of words to say she threw it, and also fluff up her own ego about how great she is, and she was just giving him a quote unquote equal opportunity, which fine, whatever. But the thing is, in doing so, in throwing it, and yes, I'm going to use that word. I'm sorry she doesn't like it. She threw it. Um, she made herself look even worse from a game perspective because it showed how absolutely clueless she was about her standing. Everyone wanted her gone. She threw away the one possibility of allowing her to stay. If we had known that when she walked out the door, Julie would have given her one of the smacks upside the head with her cue cards.
100%. I mean, I will go to my deathbed. Throwing a competition is almost always the wrong decision, especially when you're on the block. I mean, if you don't need to win it, sometimes if you're playing a veto, right, and you're not, no, you do what you need to do at some point. But most of the time, you need to win, especially if it's between you and two other people and then only one of you on the block. You need to have like this is the best part of the game right now for a player on the block. You have multiple chances to get off the block. Your hubris has to be so high to feel like no matter what, who you're next to, you can win against. And it's one of those things too. I mean, when you break down the math, you're in the same alliance is with Ashley. Rachel is much closer with her. You've made the math in your head, and that's why I'm confused sometimes when we hear her talk about the rationale, because we see her. It's not like she just does something willy-nilly. She thinks it through, but it's just like the math is not mathing. It's like 4 + 3 = 10. And I'm like, where did the other number come from? And that's how I felt like when we learned about this from her interviews where she talks about it or talks around it. Why would you throw this? And so sometimes it might be cope where it's like, okay, I could have won this because that competition is, look difficult. But at the same time, it's an easy competition to kind of throw because there's so many fluttering balls.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to your math question is she's such a bad judge of character while believing she has dead on reads. She thought everyone liked and trusted her because they told her that to her face. She said in another interview she thought she was getting a 6-1 vote in her favor. She told Dalton, "I had 1,000 conversations with people whom I thought I trusted and whom I thought I was aligned with that were supposed to be keeping me." So literally everyone lied to her this week, and she lapped it up, which isn't surprising because, like I said earlier, she had no idea that if she lost the previous blockbuster, she would have gone home. As Ashley said to Will at the time, Mickey still thinks she's running the show. It's so funny. Even the comments she makes when she tries to tell us what's going on. I'm like, girl, you don't even know. Half these people will put you up. And it's true. She was so certain. She had everyone's vote, but presumably Rachel's. And she thought she had this perfect read, but again, she missed it herself.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's the inverse of you trusted everybody instead of trusting nobody. But I think here's the other thing too. In parts of it, she did trust nobody. Like we're thinking about the Jimmy situation, the more she wasn't able to trust her allies in the right way. And if she was able to trust them, actually, if she was a little bit more trusting in certain things, and she didn't just always trust her own intuition or her own rationale, we might have seen her get away for a little bit longer, but she just didn't. And again, at the end of it, like many characters in all of time and fiction and nonfiction, hubris got her.
All right. Well, it is about time to wrap things up. So, what are your final thoughts about Mickey?
When I was younger, I'm a big fan of video games, and it was a game I loved playing all the time. I watched my brothers play it. I played it. It was on our dial-up computer, very slow internet, but we had it downloaded so we could play it. It was The Sims. All right. And if anybody who doesn't know that game, it's basically you make your character, you play it through, and every one around you is basically playing for you, essentially. There are characters you can get relationships with, you can build, you can do whatever you want in your life. It's a make your own life game. And that's how Mickey played the Big Brother house. She felt like she was the main character, and everyone around her was a sim. When they talked with her, it had the sim language. If you ever played a game, it's not even real words, you know? And in her mind, it was just they said and justified anything she wanted to do. She chose her direction, chose this and that. But in the Big Brother house, it's not the Sims game. The Sims will turn on you. And all around her within this house, they turned on her without her realizing that she cannot control, her destiny all the time without having any negative impacts on her plays. I mean, from trusting people or not trusting people, from scheming and over scheming. The difference between the Sims game and the Big Brother game is that the day does not just start over when you hit the bed, it continues on. And for Mickey, she played 3 weeks in 1 week of Big Brother, and she burnt out way too quickly. And for all the reasons we've said today, that is why Mickey lost.
See, I'm old enough that I didn't play The Sims. I played Sim City. Where it was a whole city and you had to put the power plant over here and buildings over here, and then a tornado would come through and ruin it. And so the Sims, we didn't get down to the individual level of the Sims, But coming back to this, Mickey had a lot of problems in the game of Big Brother. It was just so strange to see it happen so quickly in real time as she punted away her good position. She took Rylie's HOH and had what truly may be the worst case of HOH-itis in history. And indeed, it was a permanent case that, as I said, made her believe she was HOH for life. She thought she ran the house. She thought she controlled everyone and everything. Maybe this is SimCity. She controlled the whole house, see? But in fact, like most dictators, the more she squeezed and fought to control it all, the worse it got. To modify a quote from Princess Leia to Governor Tarkin in Star Wars, the more you tighten your grip, the more house guests will slip through your fingers. And that's exactly what happened. She thought she could tell everyone what to do. She thought she could keep people from talking to each other. She could pit them against one another. And instead, they eventually compared notes and realized she was the main cause of their problems. And most of them liked each other a lot more than they liked her. Perhaps because she believed she controlled everything, Mickey had a habit of talking about things that might never happen and revealing all sorts of information that could and did come back to bite her. She talked to a bunch of different people about targeting Rachel just before Rachel became HOH. She talked about nominating Ava as a pawn when she had no reason to believe she'd be HOH soon. As Ashley said, she burned every bridge. You can't just presume you will always have power in the game of Big Brother. It does not work that way. Coupled with her strategic mistakes was her awful social game. She treated so many players poorly and didn't seem to understand some of the basics of interacting with people. Even putting aside that this is a game and you need to be extra nice. No, not Mickey. As I mentioned, she said about Rachel, I don't care about her feelings anymore. I'm done being nice. I don't care. I noted earlier that several players had thoughts about that kind of attitude. Morgan said, the bitch does not understand that her Ava said the bitch does not understand that her actions have consequences. Morgan said something like, I'm just done with her. And when Dalton Ross asked Mickey about her eviction, she said, minds were already made up, which I didn't know that at the time. The judges were formed week 6, so that's 2 weeks ahead of me trying to work to stay in the house at week 8. So if I would have known that, of course, I think I would have done things a lot differently. But that's definitely why it didn't work. They had already made the decision. I was not in the group, so I had to go. Now, there is indeed some truth to this. But what she failed to understand is that minds were made up previously for good reasons. This was not something that magically happened. She was left out of that alliance for all of the reasons we have discussed. And even then, even recently this week, there was discussion of flipping. But she made sure they wouldn't by being herself. She thought she was in control of the game, but she was in exactly the opposite position. You have said this a couple times. She united the house in a way that almost nobody else could have. Both sides wanted her gone. And that is why Mickey lost.
That's our last pre-jury member monologue, and I love it. What a good! We need a true a little movie, a David cut of all the monologues at the end of them, put together, mash it up, so we can boom, 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 and then we have the one who won. Keanu, of course, our winner pick.
Yes, my pregame winner pick, Keanu, is definitely winning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, if he finds a way to get there with Kelly, he'll win. Other than that, I don't see it happening. But I would say stranger things have happened. I'm not sure they have, though. So, all right. Well, we will have our predictions in a moment after a few other pieces of information. And in addition, if you want our full thoughts, we are all over social media where we discuss Big Brother and other topics.
Yes, sir. Don't forget, we are active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and other topics. On Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir, and on TikTok, I'm at Bus Monkey Boy. But David is truly all over the place, but you can track him down a few different ways. You can find him on his various accounts through his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, or you can find him directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg.
Yes, I encourage anyone to come over to Blue Sky for all your Big Brother, Survivor, any other discussions. So many major Big Brother accounts have moved. It's just a better place to have those discussions. And ever since Big Brother began, for videos, I have been posting at least 3 or 4 per day, sometimes as many as 6. And you can find those on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. It's a combination of thoughts from the episode, live feeds, clips. And then, of course, I also have Australian Survivor, Australia versus the World, mini Y Blank Lost, although the finale for that is Sunday. Last week, I mentioned that I went over 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. So again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed there, or on TikTok, where I'm also, I'm over 12,000 on TikTok. So come join the fun and, see what I have to say in those videos as well. With that, it is time for our predictions. Now, this was, I always say, well, I wrote these up before the live feeds came back. These are spoiler free. Well, that was really easy because when we started recording, the live feeds weren't even back yet. Now, the problem is we don't even know what the twist is. Now, many people have speculated a whole bunch of things, like some sort of outdoor living situation, like Janky World, or a split house. Or even some horrible elimination by competition like reindeer games. All I know is that while I was about to write predictions, presuming that the blockbuster was ending, Sharon Tharp posted that was not the case. It is still going on, which is absolutely preposterous that this is happening. But I guess we take a shot in the dark here. Just not knowing what the twist is, that's all we can do. Of course, by the time anyone listens to this, they will know the twist. But then usually by the time people hear this, especially if they watch the live feeds, they already know that we were wrong before we even started. So I'm going to predict Rachel or Ashley or Morgan win HOH and nominate Keanu and Kelly. And then if it's the first two, they would add in Vince. If it's Morgan, she would add in Lauren. Now, they could decide to sort of semi-backdoor Keanu and, make it Lauren instead of him at the beginning and switch things a little bit there. But I think through some series of events, Keanu is going to be the first juror. And maybe that's just hope. Maybe it's not real.
Has there ever been a season where we have rooted so much against our winner picks? Yours being Keanu, mine is Ashley. It is fate that this has happened.
Did one of us have Cameron as a winner pick a couple years ago?
Somebody might have.
I think I might have.
It wasn't me. You know how to pick them. That's all I'm going to say.
No, wait. There's no way. There's no way I would pick Cameron instead of Corey.
No, you did pick Cameron. You did pick.
Did I?
We thought, he was the one we fought over. We usually fight over somebody, and we're like, okay, this is what we think it will be, and surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
What I will say, I think the opposite of me this time. I actually think it's time for our new HOH, someone who has not been crowned at all this year.
Oh,
our blockbuster queen, Kelly, is going to win HOH.
Oh,
and we will have the biggest HOH that truly hurts David Bloomberg in the world, because it's going to be randomness. It's going to be horrible strategy. And we're going to see probably Rachel and Ashley up there, potentially if we have the blockbuster with Vince. And I feel like we'll find a way for Rachel to get away from it. But I do think it will be the demise of probably Ashley. So
we're each predicting our winner picks go out as first.
Go out. Yes, I'm predicting Ashley's going home. You're predicting Keanu, and you know what? For once, I'm going to be rooting for you, David.
Yeah.
I'll be rooting for you. I'll be rooting for me to be right. I'll be rooting for your winner pick.
Okay.
We're swapping picks essentially at this point. Yes. Lot to see. But as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several patron-only podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook groups and Discord. You can support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to, it says it right there, WeKnowBigBrother.com or WeKnowRealityTV.com. WeKnowBigBrother.com obviously is all the Big Brother podcasts. We Know Reality TV is the Big Brother plus the Survivor plus other podcasts that are not strictly, the RHAP Rob stuff. And you can go in and you select your podcast service of choice. You'll not only find us and Taryn's daily live feeds and, just everything else depending on what show you're looking for.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and Jessica Sterling and the whole RHAP patron and reality TV wrap-ups behind the scenes team for all the work they do editing and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything they do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. And thank you so much for everyone tuning in this week. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. We want to hear your thoughts on a lot of the things we've talked about the whatever/cheat mans, about our evicted house guests. Tell us where we went wrong or what we said was right. If there's any other reasons you feel like Mickey sent herself at home, let us know your thoughts. We want to hear it because David loves hearing all the comments from both sides of the aisle.
There's only one side. There's only one side. So
the right side of David Bloomberg's mind, right?
I'm like Mickey. You can look at me and see the greatness. You could just. Yes. For anyone who did not know that, she actually said that in one of her interviews, that Morgan looked at her and saw the greatness in her. So, yeah. But Ovi, you're great too. I see the greatness in you.
Thank you.
So thank you for another great episode. We had all that human chemistry going to ensure that it went well. And, we will see everyone in a week, or you can find us all on social media in the meantime. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We Know Reality TV.